Snatching is the secret removal of corpses from burial sites. A common purpose of body snatching, especially in the 19th century, was to sell the corpses for dissection or anatomy lectures in medical schools. Those who practiced body snatching were often called resurrectionists or resurrection men. In 1823, a famous body snatcher of the name Simon Spade was on a mission to steal a body, and then something terrible happened.
Hey, yo, Sammy, how much for that body?
Around like 12 to 13,000. It depends on how hard it is to get the body.
Night, bring the body. Also, are you okay?
Nah, fam. My wife just died.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
I'll see you tomorrow with that body.
See you tomorrow.
My wife! This is my wife. Be real careful with her.
Wow, this is a nice body.
Reporting live from the graveyard, another female body is missing. Call 911 if you know of any information. This is a tutorial for beginners on how to body snatch. First, do your research. Back then, they didn't have the internet, so they just went to the library. Get the money. Make sure no one's watching. Three, find the body. Step 5, deliver the body to the scientist. And that's how you snatch your body. Be safe.
Place a mort safe around the coffin.
These were originally used to keep the bodies from escaping, but they later found out that it was easier to keep the body snatchers from stealing the bodies. But they also found there's more advantages to it, like reusing them. So what they would do after several weeks, the mort safe would be removed from one grave and used to protect a fresher body, because body snatchers would go for fresher bodies because they were a lot more valuable.
Install a coffin torpedo.
This method was more of an explosive solution. So a coffin torpedo would sit on the lid of a buried coffin and worked like a shotgun. When it would go off, it would fire lead balls at whoever was trying to dig up the coffin and kill them. That's what it looked like.
Another way was to place the body in a patent coffin. One way to make the resurrectionist job a bit more difficult was to invest in a better coffin. The richer people were often buried in a mausoleum or a caged lair, but another solution was to place the body in a new kind of iron casket called a patent coffin. In 1818, Edward Bridgman introduced the patent coffin, an iron coffin with spring catches inside the lid. Even if a would-be resurrectionist managed to uncover the entire lid of the patent coffin, it was incredibly difficult to open, even with a crowbar. Another way to prevent your body from being stolen is to use a coffin collar. A coffin collar compared to the patent coffin in the mort safe was relatively simple. Since resurrectionists typically pulled corpses from the coffins through a hole, the coffin collar fixed the corpse to the coffin itself so it couldn't get through. The iron collar was placed around the corpse's neck and then bolted to the bottom of the coffin. If the resurrectionist wanted to remove the body without damaging it, he'd have to break off the wood around the bolts.
Another method was to place booby traps in the graveyard. Rather than set protective traps around a single body, some folks tried to ward off body snatchers by booby trapping the cemetery itself. For example, when someone died in the town, the locals might attach broken glass or other sharp objects to the top of the graveyard walls to prevent resurrectionists from scaling them, or lay spring guns near fresh graves ready to fire upon any trespassers. The next method is to place the body in a mort house. Dead bodies were only good as long as they were fresh, so some cemeteries set up mort houses so that the bodies would putrefy before they were buried. Multiple corpses would be stored in the buildings for weeks, until they had rotted enough to come off the anatomist's wish list. The mort houses were easier to guard than individual graves, and some folks whose local cemeteries didn't have mort houses might let their dead bodies remain unburied at home.
The simple, low-tech method of preventing grave robbing was simply to have a human being stand guard over a freshly planted body until it has decayed past the point that you can dissect it. However, during the 19th century, body snatching was a very sneaky business. They would basically bribe the guards into looking away while they body snatched. In 1832, the UK passed the Anatomy Act, which made it legal for doctors and medical students to dissect donated corpses. This basically ended body snatching because they got donated corpses and they didn't have to pay for them anymore. This was also a more practical way to stop body snatching than burying bodies with bombs.
Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight.